started thinking with our Urgent Action Sister Funds about this convening, given the wider global context of the closing of spaces in which all of the grantees that we support and work with operate within, and we thought it would be a great idea to bring all of the women's human rights defenders together to think about how the closing of civil society spaces is manifesting in different ways.
My name is Awino Okech, and I'm going to be facilitating the next 3 days with you. Soldiers in uniform, color coordinated to mimic the national flag, march and spin giddy batons, pirouette in precise military ballet, stiff backs, their black faces gleaming with proud sweat, guns on the ready to defend our hard-won Uhuru.
I want us to remember our slain sisters, in whose shadows our struggles are emboldened, whose spirit and dreams we will advance and protect.
I first started encountering this problem of the closing space when I was working as a human rights donor, trying to support activists in basically all parts of the world. No sector can address this on its own. It maybe started as a human rights problem, but environmental organizations are affected.
Closing civic space has meant we ourselves no longer have the access that we used to have to some of the countries in the region, as states become more protective, I guess, or reactive against the pressure that they're under.
One of my big surprises was to meet Black Lives Matter people and to learn from them that actually it had a very strong feminist agenda. That anybody coming into Black Lives Matter, if you had to go through a training to become feminist in approach, you had to take a feminist approach.
Civil society space closing in the US and globally means that a lot of our people will have to feel the need more to hide and to be fearful of what's going to happen if we speak up and if we're brave about the violence and the injustice that's done to us.
I think the most trouble we have is like making feminism relevant to the everyday Ethiopian women. It's a packed word, it's very political, comes with a lot of attachment of negativity and trying to take power from men, or, you know, breaking down that African family concept. And so being able to actually make that relevant to the everyday woman and understand that we all share common struggles, and feminism is for everyone and not just the elite.
The history in terms of working on women's rights in the foundation for over 20 years has focused on very vertical, I would say, very specific issues that are considered to be women's rights issues. So very important issues. Largely have been violence against women, including in conflict and post-conflict situations. They've supported some work in sexual and reproductive rights, largely in the United States.
Closing of civic space can affect every single part of our lives. The base is in solidarity, one, and two is in knowledge, being knowledgeable and looking back into our feminist history and what the women before us also found and what they did to struggle and to resist. And the third would be to make sure that we strategize together properly and inform each other what the best way is to go forward. And I guess with all these three together, focusing both on physical and digital, things will get better for sure. Resistance is key, and we shouldn't at all let things down. We shouldn't give up.
We've heard over and over again in this space that women are targeted because they are women who are activists and they're defying social norms. So in another sense, women are taken disproportionately seriously for their activism.
A woman's nose may fall off quite often. It is a sensitive part of the body and has a tendency to take fright and jump off the face, go into hiding.
10 years ago, I started to write. And one of the reasons I started to write is because I began to realize that we exist through stories. So you are physical form, But if somebody looks at you and knows through a story what your experiences of life are, your joys, your sorrows, you become a real being.
When you allow more space internally, you see through that barrier of powerlessness. Right? But we're conditioned to stop before we get to that point, so we will never sense our true power.
Having a feminist outlook within creative work is not as common as you would expect, especially in a context where there's an increased awareness of women's rights, and that's mainly, I guess, because of the pushback by patriarchal frames and the frames that we're all so used to and that people have to unlearn very slowly. And in our opinion, that is a generational work that is done by critical masses of people that are starting to reflect on these thoughts over and over again, and starting to shift their points of view. And this is slow work because people don't change their minds quickly.
Closing spaces for feminism in my region has been two-pronged. It's on one hand a suppression of feminist thought and an onslaught. So whenever people express any idea that might contain even the suggestion that maybe women and men might deserve the same rights, there's an immediate pushback. But because there's an understanding that being a feminist means that you are foreign, you are somehow coming into the culture from the outside, and you're destructive, a lot of women have been shying away from the label. What is incredibly important is articulating a feminist understanding of the world and figuring out what it means to be feminist in our particular context.
Porque nos permite hacer una retroalimentación de nuestras acciones, pero sobre todo el contexto sobre el cual las desarrollamos y lo que implica también el logro de nuestros objetivos alrededor de distintos intereses económicos, políticos, sociales y culturales de nuestros estados, especialmente de nuestros gobiernos, que cada vez limitan más nuestras acciones para imponer lógicas de exclusión, de opresión y de control.
Watch me. Are you watching me? Yes. Watch me sashay down history, seducing the crowds. See me merciless sirens in the arms of your man. Rise up.
I want to tell a story about what that little girl who is now going to a school, who may not have been going to school, what her life is like, what she thinks, what she feels, when she becomes a woman.
Bueno, yo creo que es muy grave el cierre de los espacios de la sociedad civil porque son los espacios desde los cuales podemos generar cambios y estrategias para generar un mundo mejor, ¿no? Entonces creo que es sumamente importante pensar y organizarnos para poder poner un freno y una barrera al cierre de los espacios de la sociedad civil.
If you look at sort of the ways in which civic space is restricted, it's you have all the formal sort of use of regulation, unconstitutional regulation. So all the rules on how you can organize as civil society, as women's rights groups. But increasingly it's informal, and especially for female activists, these kind of online attacks, which are highly organized, of young bloggers, prominent women, that's new.
I believe that historically feminist work has been grounded in the connection between theorizing the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, understanding what our advocacy, our program work means for our desire to push against structural inequalities, our desire to dismantle patriarchy. And the only way we can dismantle patriarchy effectively is by taking time out, stepping back to look at the ways in which patriarchy is evolving, look at the ways in which patriarchy is manifesting differently at different moments in our societies.
And at this particular moment, patriarchy is manifesting through what we are calling closing of civic spaces. And that is through the sort of rise of neo-nationalism that has very specific implications for women's bodies. Because when nationalism is revived in countries as part of the rhetoric on sovereignty, as part of the rhetoric of protecting our countries from external influence, that automatically means that women's reproductive rights get closed down, or we see lots of regressions in terms of reproductive justice work. We see lots of regressions in terms of the ways in which women can occupy public space. And all of the spaces that we've won for women in terms of leadership, in terms of creating more spaces for women in the economic and social realm begin to shut down.
I'm so glad that Urgent Action Fund has done this initiative, because I think it's the start of a bigger process that will really, see us starting to get ways and strategies to mobilize in this closing space.
I love this convening because this empowered me even more, and sharing experiences with others and learn more about our safety, security, and of course well-being of activists. It's unforgettable and worth to stay for 3 days and took so long journey.